She probably sold it herself and forgot, my father said into the microphone, and 41 people at his retirement party heard him laugh before anyone else did. He was talking about my laptop, my grandmother's bracelet, and 2 rings that had disappeared from my bedroom, and by then my parents had already turned my missing property into a story about me being unstable and careless. What they had actually done was pawn my things for $4,860 using a fake ownership statement with my mother's signature on it and my father's driver's license attached. Then a woman I had never met stood up near the dessert table, opened a manila envelope, and read one sentence aloud that made my father stop in the middle of my name. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Paige Elizabeth Mercer. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Overland Park, Kansas on Saturday, June 15th, 2024. My father, David Mercer, retired after 32 years as an operations supervisor for a medical supply warehouse off College Boulevard. The party was in the back room of a barbecue place called Fireside Oak on Metcalf Avenue, the kind of place where the air always smells like smoked brisket, floor cleaner, and sweet bottled sauce. There were white tablecloths that did not quite reach the floor, a sheet cake with blue frosting roses, and one standing microphone the restaurant wheeled in because my mother insisted there should be speeches. My mother, Linda Mercer, likes public moments because public moments are harder to fight. People hear one thing first and then they build around it. She understands that instinct in a room better than anyone I know. I had not wanted to go. I had been thinking about not going since Tuesday night. But when your father is turning 63 and your mother has already called your aunt, your pastor's wife, and 2 of your cousins to say, Paige is having one of her difficult stretches, please be kind to her, not showing up becomes its own confession. So I wore a navy dress, drove my silver 2014 Toyota Corolla to the restaurant, and carried a folder in my tote bag so heavy it bent the leather at the handle. At 7:18 that night, after his former coworkers finished talking about inventory systems and forklift accidents and how David could identify any shipping error from 20 feet away, my father took the microphone. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked my mother for holding the family together. He thanked my younger brother, Mason, for always showing up. Then he looked directly at me. And Paige, he said, smiling the way he smiled at neighbors when he was about to make me the punchline, we all know you mean well. You have just always been the one who loses things and turns it into an emergency for everyone else. She probably sold it herself and forgot. There is a kind of silence that means shock, not the loud kind, the tight kind. 41 people. I counted because I had counted them when I walked in, as if knowing the number might help me survive the room. My Aunt Celia looked down at her water glass. My cousin Brenna pressed her lips together. My brother stared at the knot in the wood floor near the podium. Nobody laughed after that first little breath from my father. Even he heard that. I stood up anyway. I did not make a speech. I did not grab the microphone. Instead, I set my tote bag on the nearest empty chair and took out the folder I had been keeping for 11 months. Then I waited. If you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change and all you can do is keep your hand steady, you know what this felt like. You stop caring whether anyone likes you. You only care whether the next thing said in the room can survive paper. Keep listening, because the person who broke my parents open that night was not me. 3 weeks before that party, on Wednesday, May 22nd, I came home from my shift at Bluestone Dental Lab at 6:14 in the evening and knew something in my bedroom had been touched before I even turned on the light. The smell hit me first. My mother uses a powdery rose hand cream from Bath and Body Works that clings to fabric and doorknobs. My room smelled like that and dust from the hallway linen closet. I was living at home then, in the small back bedroom with one window facing the side yard and a warped closet door that never shut right. I had been saving to start a dental hygiene program at Johnson County Community College the next spring. Every spare dollar went into one navy envelope in my desk drawer marked books and boards. My MacBook Pro was how I kept my application drafts, my anatomy prereqs, my work schedule, and every side job invoice from the website work I did for 2 local salons on weekends. The laptop sat in a gray sleeve on the second shelf of my bookcase. It was not there. At first I thought I had left it in my Corolla. Then I noticed the velvet ring box from my grandmother was open on the dresser, empty except for one bent earring back. My Nana Ruth's bracelet was gone too. It was yellow gold with a tiny engraved plate on the inside that said to Paige, June 2018. Congratulations, Nana. I knew that engraving by feel. When I was nervous, I used to rub my thumb over the raised edge of the letter P. I checked the car. I checked the kitchen. I checked the hall closet for no reason at all. Then I stood in my room with the overhead fan clicking above me and understood exactly what I was looking at. My father was in the den watching a Royals game with the volume too high. My mother was at the kitchen island slicing strawberries into a glass bowl. Did either of you move my laptop? I asked. My mother did not look up. No, my bracelet and rings are gone too. She kept slicing. Then you should ask yourself where you put them. My father called out from the den, Paige, not tonight. I remember the sound of the knife on the cutting board. Light, even. Like nothing important was happening. I didn't move them, I said. My mother finally looked at me and set the knife down. You're 24 years old. This house is not a vault. If you left your things around and now you cannot find them, that is unfortunate, but you are not going to accuse us because you are disorganized. I went back to my room and took photos of everything. The empty laptop sleeve, the open jewelry box, the dresser drawer pulled out further than I ever left it, the dust outline where the sleeve had been. 7:19 p.m. The timestamps mattered to me immediately. I did not yet know how much they would matter. That night I texted my friend Noelle Kim at 7:33. Noelle and I had met in microbiology lab 2 years earlier. She was in her second year of law school by then and had a mind that organized panic into steps. I sent her 4 photos and wrote, "My parents took my laptop and jewelry, or someone did. I know how that sounds." She called me in under 30 seconds. First, she said, email yourself everything you remember right now. What was missing, where it was when you last saw it. I opened a blank email and typed while she talked. MacBook Pro 13-inch, space gray, serial number on box and closet, Nana bracelet engraved, 2 rings, 1 plain gold band from my 16th birthday, 1 opal ring from Aunt Celia. Last seen Sunday night, May 19th. Second, Noelle said, check any place the serial number exists. Receipts, setup email, old photos. I found the laptop box still on the top closet shelf behind winter boots. The serial number label was intact. I took a photo, 8:12 p.m. Third, she said. Don't accuse them in writing yet. Ask simple questions. Save every answer. That was the first night I understood this was not going to be about emotion. It was going to be about sequence. The next morning, Thursday, May 23rd at 9:06, I texted my mother. Did you or Dad move my MacBook Pro, Nana's bracelet, or my rings from my room? I need a direct answer. At 9:11, she wrote back, no, you need to stop creating chaos in this house over misplaced items. At 9:14, my father added, your mother is right. Handle your own belongings. I screenshotted both. During my lunch break, I called 3 local pawn shops, then 6, then 11. I started with Overland Park, then Olathe, then Shawnee, and then I widened the circle to Wyandotte County because a person who wants distance but not inconvenience usually drives just far enough to feel smart. The 8th store, Prairie Gold and Loan in Merriam, put me on hold for 2 minutes and 46 seconds while I listened to a station playing 80s rock too softly to identify. A man came back on the line and said, can you give me the serial number on the MacBook again? I did. He was quiet for a second too long. Ma'am, he said carefully, I can't release customer information over the phone, but if you believe your property is here, you need to come in with proof of ownership and identification. That was at 12:38 p.m. I still remember the smell of my turkey sandwich turning sour in the break room fridge while I wrote down the address on the back of a dental supply invoice. Prairie Gold and Loan sat in a strip mall between a tax preparation office and a nail salon, with faded yellow lettering and a bell on the door that gave one tired ring when you entered. Inside it smelled like metal shelves, old carpet, and lemon disinfectant. Glass cases held guitars, drills, wedding bands, and game consoles lined up like all the small emergencies in one county had been alphabetized. The assistant manager, a woman named Yvette Salinas, met me at the counter, mid-40s, black bob, silver cross necklace. the kind of person who had seen every version of someone standing there trying not to shake. I showed her the serial number photo from the box, old pictures of me wearing the bracelet, and the photo timestamp from the previous night of my empty shelf. She brought out my laptop first. It still had the sticker from my community college bookstore on the underside. My chest actually hurt when I saw it. Then she brought out a sealed evidence envelope containing the bracelet and rings because jewelry intake was handled separately. The bracelet's clasp was bent. "Who brought these in?" I asked. Yvette looked at me for a long second. "I can tell you what our paperwork says." The seller was Linda Mercer. There is a secondary ID noted for David Mercer because on items over a certain amount, if a spouse claims ownership by gift or inheritance, we ask questions. There is an ownership statement signed on site. I heard my own voice go flat. "What kind of statement?" She slid a photocopy toward me but kept one finger on the top corner. "It says these items were lawfully theirs to sell, specifically that the laptop had been given to them by their daughter and the jewelry was family property in their possession. Total paid was $4,860. $1,900 for the laptop package, $2,400 for the bracelet, and $560 combined for the rings. My mother had listed my grandmother's bracelet as family property in their possession." I looked at the signatures. Linda Mercer's was neat and tilted slightly left, exactly like it looked on birthday cards and church checks. My father's driver's license photocopy was attached to the back page. Date of transaction, Monday, May 20th. 11:26 a.m. I had been at work until 4 that day. My father had texted me at noon asking if I wanted rotisserie chicken for dinner. That is how long it took them to erase me. Yvette explained that state rules required a holding period before resale. If I claimed theft, the items could be flagged, but she would need either a police case number or written instruction from law enforcement. She was careful with every sentence, not cold, precise. I asked if there was camera footage. "We keep 30 days active in store unless requested," she said. "Audio is limited at the front counter, but the cameras are clear." "Can you save it?" She nodded once. "If you bring me something showing ownership by tomorrow, I can mark the file." I left the shop and sat in my Corolla with the air conditioner off, hands on the steering wheel, listening to someone in the next parking space eating chips from a crinkling bag. I did not cry. I took a photo of the business card Yvette had given me. Then I opened notes and typed out every detail before memory could blur it. Date, time, amount, wording, placement of the photocopy, bent clasp, her exact phrase, family property in their possession. If you've ever been in that stage where the truth is sitting right in front of you and somehow you still feel crazy because the people who did it raised you, I need you to hear me. Evidence does not calm you down right away. First, it makes the betrayal heavier. But this next part matters, because once I had proof, my parents stopped just lying. They started using other people. I drove home at 4:52 and found my mother on the back patio watering the ferns. Cicadas were screaming from the maple tree. The hose kept ticking against the concrete. "I found the laptop," I said. She smiled at the hanging basket instead of at me. "Good." "I found the bracelet and the rings too, at Prairie Golden Loan in Merriam, under your name." She turned off the water, straightened up, and looked directly at me. Her face did not change. "Do not say that where your father can hear you," she said. "He is exhausted. Did you pawn my property?" "What you are calling your property was in this family's possession. The bracelet belonged to my mother before your grandmother passed it around like a favor. The laptop was bought while you lived under our roof. I bought that laptop." "You assembled funds while under our roof," she said. "You are young enough to believe that distinction does not matter." I had my phone in my hand at my side, recording voice memo without the screen lit. Noel had told me to do that whenever lawful in our state if I was a party to the conversation. Kansas is one-party consent. I knew that by then. "I need my items released," I said. My mother set the hose down in a neat coil. "You need to stop embarrassing this family with hysterics. If you go to the police, understand very clearly that we will explain your recent behavior. We will explain the missing cash from your own room that you blamed on Mason last year. We will explain your instability to whoever asks. There had been no missing cash last year. There had been a $20 bill I misplaced in a coat pocket for 2 days." I said. "Are you threatening me?" She lifted one shoulder. "I am warning you not to make a false theft claim over household property." Then she went back inside through the sliding door. At 6:21 that evening, my Aunt Celia called. Her voice was too careful. Your mother says you've been under stress, honey. That was fast. My mother had called her within an hour. Did she tell you she pawned my laptop and Nana's bracelet? I asked. Silence. Then Celia said, I think maybe there was a misunderstanding about what belonged to whom. Did she tell you she signed a paper saying I gifted them the items? Another silence. Longer. No, Celia said quietly. I wrote down the time, the wording, and the pause length after we hung up. I had started doing that with everyone. Not because I enjoyed it, because my parents depended on the blur. By Friday morning, they had escalated at 8:46 a.m. while I was printing serial number documentation at the library on 79th Street because I did not trust the printer at home. Officer Trent Wallace from the Overland Park Police Non-Emergency Division called me. He said my parents had reported that I was repeatedly showing up at businesses making false accusations and harassing them at home over a property dispute. Am I in trouble? I asked. No, he said. This is a call log situation right now, not charges. I'm advising both sides to keep the peace. Did they tell you they signed an ownership statement at a pawn shop for my items? He paused. They said there are disagreements over gifts and family property. I have the serial number photos and the shop records. Then document everything, he said. If property was sold without permission, that changes things. He was not rude. He was also not my rescuer. That mattered too. I wrote down his name, badge number, exact phrasing, and the incident reference number he gave me. Then I drove back to Prairie Gold and Loan with a folder that now held my laptop purchase receipt from Best Buy, my Apple setup confirmation, 3 dated photos of me wearing the bracelet at my high school graduation dinner, and the recording from the patio copied to a cloud drive and a flash drive both. Yvette met me again. This time the owner was there too, a man named Samir Haddad in a striped tie and reading glasses. He reviewed the documents, nodded once, and said, We will flag the account and preserve the footage. He could not release the items to me without law enforcement direction because of how the intake had been logged. But he could print the transaction details and he could keep the file from moving. He also said one thing I did not expect. My daughter was working the front counter that day, he told me. She mentioned a woman arguing about the appraisal on an engraved bracelet. If needed, she remembers it. A woman arguing about an engraved bracelet. My mother had stood there looking at my grandmother's message to me and still asked for more money. I went to work that afternoon and smiled at clients and answered calls and color-matched crowns while my stomach felt lined with tin. At 3:17, my younger brother Mason texted me. Mom says stop dragging strangers into family business. I wrote back, were you home on Monday morning, May 20th? He did not answer for 2 hours. At 5:23 he sent, I was in and out, I wrote. Did you see them leave with my laptop bag? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I don't want involved. I saved that too. He knew something and had decided silence was safer. Families are built on that decision more often than people admit. On Sunday, May 26th, after church, my mother stopped our pastor's wife, Deborah Holloway, in the parking lot and told her I was making dangerous accusations over sentimental confusion. Deborah called me that afternoon and asked if I wanted prayer. Not truth, prayer, I said. Did my mother tell you she signed a statement saying I gave her my laptop? Deborah inhaled sharply and said, She did not put it that way. No, I said, she wouldn't. That night I started the binder. 3 tab sections, timeline, property ownership, third-party records. In timeline I put every text, every call log screenshot, every note with date and time. In property ownership, I put the laptop receipt, Apple registration, old photos, and my Nana's handwritten card from graduation that matched the engraving. In third-party records, I put Yvette's card, Officer Wallace's incident reference, and a 1-page summary Noelle helped me draft in plain language so anyone reading it could follow the story in under 2 minutes. Noelle came over Tuesday, May 28th, at 7:10 p.m. with Thai takeout and sticky rice and sat cross-legged on my floor while we sorted. The room smelled like red curry and paper dust. She wore her hair in a claw clip and read everything twice. They're trying to get out in front of the facts, she said. That means the facts are strong. I don't want a war, I said. She looked up from the pawn ticket copy. Paige, they're already having one. You're just deciding whether to show up with receipts. I laughed once because it was true and because if I did not laugh, I was going to break open. She took my phone and organized the evidence into albums by date. She renamed files so the timestamps sat in order. She made me email everything to a new account my parents did not know existed. Then she said, "There's one person missing. Mason." No, the person at the counter, the daughter. On Thursday, May 30th at 1:20 in the afternoon, I went back to Prairie Gold and Loan and met Samir's daughter, Rania Haddad, in a tiny office behind the security door, where the copier hummed and somebody had spilled coffee near the baseboard long enough ago for the smell to settle into the room. She was 29, wearing a green blouse and a name tag, and she looked uncomfortable in the way honest people look when they realize the small thing they noticed is attached to a much bigger thing. "I don't know your family," she said immediately. "I just remember what I saw." She told me my mother came in first carrying a gray laptop sleeve and a jewelry pouch. My father arrived maybe 10 minutes later because the bracelet appraisal came back lower than she expected, and she wanted another person listed on the paperwork. She remembered my mother saying, "The engraving is sentimental, not market value." She remembered my father joking that our daughter leaves expensive things all over the house, at least this way they become useful. Rania had copied the ownership statement and driver's license because that was standard for the transaction. She had also initialed the ticket next to the item count. Her initials were there on the form, RH in blue ink. I asked if she would be willing to write down what she remembered. She hesitated. I understood why. People hear family and they back away. "I'm not asking you to pick sides," I said. "I'm asking you to preserve what happened before somebody talks you out of what you know." She looked at me for maybe 4 seconds. Then she nodded. She typed a statement on store letterhead while I sat across from her and listened to a compressor kick on in the workshop. Date, time. She identified herself as present during intake on May 20th. She described the argument over the bracelet engraving and confirmed that Linda and David Mercer represented the items as theirs to sell. Samir signed underneath as owner, confirming she was employed there and the records matched. I walked out with a copy in my hand and sat in my car for a full minute, not moving. I had been keeping that folder for 11 days. If you've ever had the truth arrive from someone who does not love you, does not hate you, and has nothing to gain, you know how clean that feels. It is almost physical, like breathing all the way down for the first time in weeks. And that should have been enough, but my parents still had one more move. That Saturday, June 1st at 9:30 in the morning, my father knocked on my bedroom door with that polite 3-tap rhythm he used when he wanted witnesses to remember he had been calm. "Can we speak downstairs?" he asked. The kitchen smelled like coffee grounds and bacon grease. My mother sat at the island with her hands folded. Mason stood near the fridge pretending to check something on his phone. My father spoke first. "Your mother and I are willing to resolve this if you agree to stop contacting businesses and stop spreading private family matters." I sat down but did not remove my bag from my shoulder. "Resolve what?" I asked. My mother slid a single sheet of paper toward me. It was typed. No letterhead, no title. Just 5 short lines saying I acknowledge confusion over shared family property, agreed not to make further accusations, and would consider the matter closed. No mention of the laptop, no mention of the bracelet, no mention of money. "I am not signing that," I said. My father's jaw shifted once. "Then understand this. If you continue, you cannot remain in this house." I looked at Mason. He looked at the tile floor. My mother said very evenly, "We have protected you through every dramatic phase of your adulthood. We will not be publicly humiliated because you want attention." I stood up. "I'll be out by Tuesday," I said. That surprised them. My father blinked once. "You are choosing this," my mother said. "No," I said, "you did. I packed that night. 2 suitcases, 1 laundry basket, 1 banker box of binders and receipts, and the framed graduation photo with my Nana in it." On Sunday morning, Aunt Celia texted me one line, "Come here, back door's open." She lived in Roland Park in a brick ranch house that always smelled like cedar blocks and laundry soap. She had my Nana's hands, wide knuckles, strong wrists. She did not hug me when I came in. She put a mug of coffee in front of me and said, "Show me everything." So I did. She read in silence. Every page, the fake ownership statement, the item totals, the texts, the patio recording transcript I had typed out. When she got to the graduation card from Nana Ruth and saw the line in that shaky handwriting, "Wear it when you need reminding," she took off her reading glasses and pressed her fingers against the bridge of her nose. Then she said, "I need to tell you something I should have told you sooner." When Nana died in 2021, she had divided small jewelry pieces informally before the estate sale. Not in a will attachment, not through lawyers, just by notes in little envelopes because there was no real money involved. Aunt Celia had taken photos that afternoon because Nana made everyone hold up their item and smile at the kitchen table on Lamar Avenue. Celia still had those photos on an external drive. One of them showed me, age 18, holding the bracelet with the engraving visible inside while Nana laughed in the background. "I heard your mother call it family property last week," Celia said. "I knew that was not right. I should have said it then." I did not punish her for waiting. Silence has its own shame. She already had enough of it. By Monday evening, Celia had found the photos and printed them at Walgreens, time-stamped June 23, 2018. She also found a Christmas video from 2019 where my Nana asked me on camera if I was still wearing that bracelet I had engraved for graduation. It was not elegant evidence, it was better. It was ordinary. Noelle came by Celia's house Tuesday night and helped us build version 2 of the binder. We added the graduation photo, the video stills, and a one-page witness sheet with names, phone numbers, and what each person knew. Yvette for the records, Rania for the counter interaction, Samir to authenticate store records, Aunt Celia for Nana's transfer of the bracelet, Officer Wallace for the call log, Mason maybe if he ever decided to tell the truth. On Wednesday, June 5th, I got an email from my mother with the subject line Family Boundaries. It said, "You are no longer welcome to attend your father's retirement event unless you are prepared to behave appropriately and keep private matters private. If you choose to attend, you will not create a scene." I stared at that sentence for a long time. You will not create a scene. Noelle looked over my shoulder and said, "She thinks she's the only one allowed to pick the room." That was when the plan became clear. I wrote back at 3:42 p.m. I will attend. Short, clean, no emotion. Over the next 10 days, I did not blast them on social media. I did not send mass texts. I did not go door to door with my binder like an unpaid auditor of my own childhood. Instead, I got sharper. I requested my bank statements showing the Best Buy purchase of the laptop in February 2023, $1,699.87 on my debit card, plus AppleCare on a separate line. I pulled cloud login history to show the device was mine and had been active until the afternoon of May 19th. I printed my work timesheet for Monday, May 20th to establish I was on shift while they were at the pawn shop. I called the engraver listed in the graduation invoice, Aunt Celia found in Nana's papers. The shop owner in Lenexa confirmed the bracelet inscription order from June 12, 2018. He emailed the invoice copy within the hour. Every time I added something to the folder, I felt less like their daughter and more like the archivist of a crime scene. On Friday, June 7th, Mason showed up at Aunt Celia's house at 8:23 p.m. in his white Ford F-150, engine still running, and asked if we could talk outside. The air smelled like cut grass and gasoline. He did not sit. He leaned against the porch rail and kept scratching at a loose thread on his sleeve. "I saw them take the stuff," he said. I waited. It was Monday morning. Mom had your gray laptop case. Dad had the jewelry pouch from Nana's dresser drawer. I asked what they were doing. Mom said fixing a problem before she turns 24 into 40. I thought maybe they were locking it up or something. Did you see where they went? Dad said marry him because they had errands. I looked at him for a long second. "Why didn't you tell me?" he swallowed. "Because if I got in the middle, I'd have nowhere to live." That was honest. Ugly, but honest, I said. "Are you willing to write that down?" He closed his eyes for a second. If it comes to that, it had already come to that, but I did not say it. I just texted myself the notes as soon as he drove away. If you've ever had a sibling choose survival over you, you know the feeling. It is not surprise, not exactly. It is confirmation. And the reveal night was still a week away. The party invitation said 6:30 p.m. cocktails, 7 p.m. dinner, 7:45 speeches. Fireside Oak had a private room with a low ceiling and framed black and white photos of Kansas City stockyards on the walls. On the day of the party, I got there at 6:26. I wore the same navy dress because I wanted no one saying I had dressed for theater. My tote held 3 binders, 12 copies of the one-page summary, and one smaller envelope addressed to Officer Wallace in case I needed it after. Aunt Celia came with me. So did Noelle, technically as my guest. She wore a cream blouse and did not speak unless spoken to. We had agreed on exactly one thing. I would not be the one to announce the truth. I would answer direct questions only. The room had to do the rest. At 7:49, my father made his joke about me selling my own belongings and forgetting. At 7:51, after the silence settled unevenly around the room, a woman near the dessert table stood up. It took me half a second to place her because I had only met her once under fluorescent lights behind a security door. Rania Haddad. She held a manila envelope against her side and looked at Samir, who was standing beside her in a dark suit, and then back at the room. "I'm sorry," she said. "I believe I need to correct something." People turned. I heard silverware stop against plates. My mother's face stayed composed for one impossible second. Then she recognized Rania. Samir spoke first because he was older and used to owning a room. "I own Prairie Gold and Loan in Merriam. This is my daughter, Rania Haddad. We came because Ms. Paige Mercer requested copies of transaction records involving property she documented as hers. We were told tonight those items had been sold by Ms. Paige herself. That is not what our records show." No one moved. Rania opened the envelope, removed one page, and read from it in the same calm voice she had used in that back office. On May 20th, 2024, at 11:26 a.m., Linda Mercer signed an ownership statement at our counter representing a MacBook Pro laptop, one engraved gold bracelet, and 2 rings as her lawful property to sell. David Mercer provided identification and was present during the appraisal discussion. She lowered the page. The bracelet was discussed specifically because the inside engraving appeared to identify it as belonging to Paige. 8 seconds, I counted them. Then my Aunt Celia stood up from my table and said, "It did belong to Paige. Ruth gave it to her at graduation. I have the photographs." My father opened his mouth. "Paige," he said, and stopped halfway through it like the word itself had gone dry. My mother did not cry. She did not confess. She said one broken sentence. "That is not how that was understood." Samir answered her. "Not me." The statement signed in our store did not say misunderstood. It said lawfully owned. The room changed shape after that. You could feel it. People stopped looking at me to gauge whether I was dramatic and started looking at the papers. My father's former coworker, Dan Mueller, asked, "David, did you sign something saying her things were yours?" My father did not answer him. Noelle quietly handed copies of the one-page summary to the 2 tables nearest the podium, not theatrically, just efficiently. Aunt Celia gave one to Deborah Holloway from church. Someone at the back whispered, "Oh my God," and someone else said, "There's a police reference number on this." Yvette had come too, though I had not known until then. She stepped in from the hallway where she must have been waiting and said, "I was the assistant manager on duty. The item photos and intake records are in our system. The bracelet clasp was bent when it came in. The engraving is visible in the image set." My mother sat down very slowly. My father folded his retirement speech in half and set it on the table. Not the dramatic collapse kind, the administrative defeat kind. Then Officer Wallace appeared in the doorway. I had not invited him to perform anything. Earlier that afternoon, I had dropped off a copy packet and told dispatch there might be a need to update the property complaint if the reporting parties made public statements contradicting the records. I expected maybe a phone call on Monday. Instead, he came in person, because Prairie Gold had apparently already forwarded the flagged transaction file once Samir realized the sellers and the complainant would all be in one room. Officer Wallace did not know or care about the emotional history. That was exactly why he was useful. He stepped beside Samir and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, based on the ownership records provided and the statements preserved by the shop, I need to speak with you outside regarding the property report and the false information given in the earlier call log." That sentence landed heavier than any speech I could have made. My mother looked at him and said, "This is a private family matter." He said, "Not if property was sold using a false statement." Silence again. 41 people had come to celebrate my father retiring. Now they were watching an officer ask him to leave his own party room. My brother Mason stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. He looked sick. Officer Wallace turned to him and said, "Sir, were you present when the items were taken from Miss Mercer's room?" Mason stared at my mother, then at me, then back at the floor. "Yes," he said. One word. That was enough. My father closed his eyes. My mother looked at Mason with a kind of coldness I had seen all my life, and only then realized had always been a warning system for everyone else in the house. Officer Wallace asked them to step into the hallway. They did not willingly, not loudly. My father left his blue retirement cake untouched on the table with the knife still in it. The room did not erupt. People in real life rarely do. It just split into whispers and fixed stares and one very small child at the far table asking his mother why everyone was acting strange. I stayed seated. That part matters to me. I stayed seated. If you've ever wondered whether vindication feels good in the moment, my answer is complicated. It feels clean. It also feels expensive, because when the truth finally lands, you have to stand in the wreckage and admit that you were right about people you once needed. Officer Wallace spoke to them in the hallway for 14 minutes. I know because I checked the time on my phone when they left and again when he came back in. During those 14 minutes, Samir gave him copies of the intake paperwork, the ownership statement, and the ID photocopy. Rania gave him her contact information. Yvette emailed the transaction images from the store system. Aunt Celia showed him the graduation photos and the engraver's invoice on her phone. Noelle handed over the summary packet and my printed timeline. When my parents came back into the room, my mother's lipstick was still perfect. My father's tie had shifted slightly left. Officer Wallace said in a voice meant for the room but not dramatic, "For anyone concerned, the property described by Ms. Mercer has been formally linked to the pawn transaction. The items are being held. Follow-up will occur through Merriam and Overland Park because the sale and the reporting crossed jurisdictions." Crossed jurisdictions. Even that sounded humiliating in a retirement room with blue frosting roses. My father picked up his folded speech and put it into his jacket pocket. Then he said one thing to me. "We were trying to teach you." I looked at him and said, "By stealing from me." He did not answer. My mother walked past me on the way out and said very quietly, "You have made this impossible." I said, "You did that in May." And that was it. No final argument, no big crowd applause. Just people moving out of the path as my parents left the room they had paid a deposit to reserve. The concrete price started 3 days later. On Tuesday, June 18th, Prairie Gold released my laptop and jewelry after law enforcement cleared the hold. The bracelet clasp had to be repaired for $140. The opal ring had a new scratch along the side stone. My laptop had been factory checked by the shop and rebooted, which meant I spent 6 hours restoring files and relogging every account. I documented the damage and the repair cost anyway. On Thursday, June 20th, Officer Wallace called to tell me the case had been referred for charges tied to the false ownership statement and the false information in the earlier call log. He said it in plain language. They signed something saying your property was theirs and then reported you as the problem when you challenged it. Within 2 weeks, my parents had to pay back the full $4,860 to resolve the pawn transaction issue, plus the bracelet repair, plus administrative fees the shop charged for the flagged release and documentation time. Total out-of-pocket was $5,412. My father lost his part-time retirement consulting offer with his former company's regional vendor after Dan Miller, who had been at the party, decided he did not want someone handling inventory controls who had just been publicly tied to a fraudulent pawn transaction. Dan told Aunt Celia that directly. "I cannot put a man like that near our books." That was the phrase. A man like that. My mother got removed as treasurer of the women's ministry at church by the end of July after Deborah Holloway and 2 board members reviewed the pawn paperwork and the ownership statement. They did not make a public spectacle of it. They simply announced at Sunday service that financial duties were being reassigned. In her world, that was public enough. Mason moved into an apartment with 2 friends in Shawnee by August 1st. He texted me the new address and said, "I should have told you sooner." I wrote back, "You should have. We speak now, but not often." As for me, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Mission on July 12th, $890 a month, 2nd floor, thin walls, one reliable window unit, and exactly no one with a key who thought my things belonged to them. The first night there, I put my laptop on my own table and my Nana's bracelet in a ceramic dish by the bed and slept without waking up at every hallway sound. That is how quiet can feel after a war. I started the dental hygiene program the following January. I paid my deposit on time. My Best Buy statement and the pawn shop copies are still in a red folder in my filing cabinet. Not because I need them every day, but because I no longer trust memory to protect me when paper can do it better. People ask sometimes, mostly women who hear some version of this through cousins or church, whether my parents and I ever worked it out. The answer is no. Not cleanly, not in the way people mean when they ask that. My father sent me 2 voicemails in September. The first was 48 seconds long and mostly breathing before he said families should not do this to each other. The second was shorter. He said, I think enough time has passed. It had been 89 days I did not call back. My mother mailed me a birthday card in November with no note inside, just her name signed in the same neat left-leaning script she used on the fake ownership statement. I threw away the envelope and kept the card for one reason only: signature comparison. Old habits, Aunt Celia and I have lunch twice a month now at a diner on Johnson Drive with burnt coffee and lemon pie that is always too cold in the middle. Sometimes we talk about my Nana, sometimes we do not. She has apologized more than once for staying quiet those first days. I tell her the truth. You came in before the end. For some people, that is as much grace as I have left. Noelle passed the bar last fall. The framed photo from her swearing in sits on my bookshelf next to the bracelet dish. Under it is the first page of the one-page summary she helped me build, because sometimes surviving something means honoring the version of yourself who got organized instead of getting louder. If you're listening to this and you're still in the middle of your own version of it, where everyone around you is saying, it is family, let it go, I want to say something very plain. Family is not a receipt for your silence. Blood does not turn theft into misunderstanding, and calm is not the same thing as surrender. I won, yes. They paid money, they lost positions they cared about. Their names are attached to a police report and a pawn record they cannot explain away with church language and soft voices. But I do not get back the exact version of myself who still thought a locked bedroom door inside your parents' house meant anything. Winning gave me proof. It did not give me innocence back. I wear my Nana's bracelet sometimes now, but not the way I used to. I do not rub the engraving when I'm nervous anymore. I read it, to Paige, June 2018. Congratulations, Nana. She meant, you are yours.